I'm Amanda. Welcome. If you are one of my TAs or my professor, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the video. And if you're just somebody stumbling by, thanks for watching and tuning in. And now on to the content. On November 23rd, 2024, the second and final season of the hit Netflix series Arcane premiered globally, and fans all over the world got to see where their favorite characters ended up in the riveting season finale. In the chart-topping, critical darling of a final season, based on the internationally popular video game League of Legends, fans got to see the progression of the series' main romance between two of the show's female protagonists, Vi and Caitlyn. The same-sex couple shared multiple intimate moments, including kissing scenes and a little more than kissing scenes, all culminating in a tender final scene in the season finale for both characters to affirm their relationship. But amongst the discourse of the final season, clips of scenes with Vi and Caitlyn started circulating online that looked pretty different from the version released by Netflix. These heavily censored clips, where sometimes Vi and Caitlyn weren't even allowed to be in the same frame, came from the official Chinese version of Arcane, released on Chinese streaming services at the same time as the show's Netflix release. This blatant example of a Chinese release severely altering the original version sparked conversation in fan discussions and Western news about China's censorship policy surrounding imported Western media. So, why was the Chinese release of Arcane changed so drastically? Are the alterations made so intense that the censored version is essentially a completely different version of the story? And will Chinese fans have a different reading of the show altogether? Let's talk about it. To understand why the Chinese version of Arcane was changed so much in the first place, we need to first understand the complex nature of censorship in China. The regulation of film and television in China is overseen by the China Film Administration, with distribution being overseen by the National Radio and Television Administration. The overall goal of these agencies in regards to censorship is, according to the 2017 Film Industry Promotion Law, to promote core socialist values and ensure that films not include a variety of subject matter deemed not in line with these values and those of the Chinese Communist Party. According to June Fong's The Culture of Censorship, while the type of content considered sensitive is loosely outlined in vague terms like anything jeopardizing Chinese unity or advocating obscenity, gambling, or drug abuse, censorship guidelines are intentionally left ambiguous, and censors largely operate on an arbitrary case-by-case basis. Why? Fong argues that this might be how the government fosters an environment of ideological control through driving constant fear and anxiety with unpredictable and amorphous rules. On the other hand, it could be to allow censors more freedom to individualize their approach to the censorship process of each production. Censors don't follow a precise step-by-step rulebook, and what is kept in a film or show and what is taken out is a result of ongoing back-and-forth relationship between censors, creatives, and studio representatives. What ensues is almost a social dynamic, where informal guanxi-like connections are built between the film side and the state side. Producers might even highlight specific scenes or content of a sensitive nature for the censors to pay extra attention to, or anticipate feedback from the censors and self-censor content before it's even sent off. This creates a level of trust between the censors and the creatives, and sometimes allows for the creatives to push back against the censors and ask for leniency on particular content they're especially keen on keeping unaltered. In this sense, censors and creatives in China work together, not against each other, and must use creative solutions to produce a final product both sides deem acceptable. But remember, in the case of Arcane, there's a third player in the censorship relationship: the private online streaming platforms. The official release of China's Arcane, called League of Legends: Battle of Two Cities, is available to watch on private Chinese online streaming services like Tencent and Bilibili. Just like film studios have to deal with the censors, so too do these private streaming services. In order to maintain positive relationships with the government's film regulatory agencies, many Chinese streaming services engage in self-censorship practices. Bilibili, for example, continuously takes down videos for content review and re-uploads additionally censored versions. The site also has a reporting function, where users themselves can report videos for violating censorship guidelines. Even if our particular scene or subject matter is deemed acceptable by the state censors, the streaming platform, a private company, might ask for additional censorship to meet their own guidelines. This means that creatives have to balance the requests and concerns of both the state and their distribution platforms. What does this mean for a show like Arcane, imported to China already fully written and animated, depicting an explicit same-sex relationship? In this case, the studio didn't just go back and reanimate entire scenes to cater to Chinese state or platform-based censorship policies. Instead, they got creative by altering sensitive dialogue and translation, using simple editing tricks to change particular scenes, and when that wasn't enough, they cut out scenes altogether. This is what June Fong calls reconfiguration, where the process of finding ways to creatively address the censor's concerns can become generative, and new narratives and stories can emerge from the altered version. And with the amount of significant alterations made to Arcane in order for it to be approved under censorship, it begs the question, is the official Chinese version of Arcane a completely new story? While the Chinese version of Arcane had many changes, not just relegated to depictions of same-sex relationships, I want to focus specifically on how the removal of Vi and Caitlyn's relationship changes the story. Chinese censorship guidelines do specifically categorize homosexuality as abnormal sexual activity, and states that depictions of same-sex relationships are amidst the type of content a film cannot depict. As for why the Chinese state cares about homosexuality, it can perhaps be traced to the idea of the traditional family unit, and how same-sex relationships may challenge societal and national goals. In the case of Arcane, the explicit on-screen relationship between Vi and Caitlyn is a direct violation of these guidelines and cannot be included in any official release of the series. And so, the two scenes where Vi and Caitlyn were kissing or engaging in sexual activity were cut out altogether, and scenes where these two were intimately talking or laying on each other were edited in a way where the two couldn't even share the same frame. The result is a version of the story where Vi and Caitlyn's relationship is platonic, and any romance is pushed to subtext. But Vi and Caitlyn's relationship is a huge part of the story of Arcane, and is an integral part of both of their character arcs throughout the series. In Chiara Bucchiara's Genetically Modified TV, she calls the significant modification of shows when being adapted for new audiences genetic alterations. She states that this manipulation affects the genetic code of the original shows to the point that the final translated product appears to be sometimes substantially different from its English language version, and thereby altering the intent of the show's creator or showrunner and writers. I argue that the changes made to Arcane in the censored Chinese version are, as Bucchiara calls it, genetic alterations that fundamentally change the story being told and the reading the audience takes out of the show. In an interview with Arcane writer Amanda Overton, she explains just how central Vi and Caitlyn's relationship is to not only their arcs as characters, but the overall themes of the show. She states that Vi and Caitlyn are the series' main couple, or in fandom speak, one true pairing. Both the scenes where Vi and Caitlyn kiss, and every intimate moment in between, speak to their individual character arcs. With the writer's intentions taken into consideration, what does the removal of this central relationship do to the story that Arcane wants to tell? For this next part, I'm going to get into some analysis of Arcane Season 2, which requires providing some context on the show for those of you who haven't seen it. If you have seen Arcane, bear with me during some of these explanations. Let's first address the removal of the first kiss scene in Season 2, Episode 3. This moment is a key indication of Vi and Caitlyn's character arcs at this point in the show. As Overton says, that kiss, because it comes so early in their arc, was always meant to be the right thing for the wrong reasons. You want to feel really good because they're finally kissing, but the promise that Vi asks her in desperation is an impossible ask.
Everyone in my life has changed. Promise me you won't change.
Caitlyn responds in a way where she wants this to be true. Vi wants this to be true. Both of them want this to be true. So kissing was their way of conveying that up. If you haven't seen Arcane, the reason Overton says the promise is an impossible task is because in that moment, Caitlyn already had changed, but she and Vi don't want to admit it yet. This denial of just how much Caitlyn's mental state has already changed from both characters sets the stage for their actions later. Caitlyn goes on to treat Vi poorly, spiral into obsession, and be manipulated by others, while Vi betrays her morals and follows Caitlyn into being an enforcer, Arcane's version of a cop, because she wants to believe that the girl she cared for in Season 1 is still there. The Chinese version of this scene keeps this promise.
我生命中的每个人都变了，但是我希望你不要变。不会的。
But without the kiss afterwards, we don't truly get to see the extent of the denial both characters have, which makes it harder to understand their actions in the rest of the season. Moving on to another heavily censored scene, in Season 2, Episode 4, Caitlyn is revealed to be in another same-sex relationship with the character Maddie after breaking up with Vi. Overton says that this was included because it plays into Caitlyn's character arc of can I be the Kierman? Can I be what my mom wanted me to be? Like, should I date someone my mom wanted me to date? Caitlyn's relationship with Maddie demonstrates just how deep Caitlyn's need to live up to her family name after her mom's murder is. Her need to live up to her dead mother's legacy is so intense that it bleeds into her personal relationships. By seeing the depth of Caitlyn's obsession with her mother's expectations, the audience is able to understand why she commits many of the bad deeds seen throughout season 2, and why her character would act in opposition of her morals. In the Chinese version, where Maddie and Caitlyn are just platonic besties, we again miss out on this integral part of Caitlyn's character, and her actions in season 2 become harder to understand and sympathize with. Next, the prison scene where Vi and Caitlyn rekindle their relationship in season 2, episode 8, which is cut entirely in the Chinese version before any physical intimacy, is pivotal to both their character arcs. For Vi in particular, Overton says, what we asked of Vi's character arc in this season was, who would she be if she had no one left to protect? So with her action of kissing Kate, she gets to say, I'm finally going to make the right choice for me, and this is what I want. And I love when you can have an action like that be the culmination of a character arc. If I had no one left to protect, I would fall in love. Without this scene, the Chinese version of Arcane leaves out the culmination of one of its protagonist arcs. In this version, we don't ever get to see Vi make the right choice for herself, or choose something for herself that isn't based on protecting someone else. If Vi never takes a selfish action, her character arc remains stagnant, and you never get to see how she has grown as a character beyond someone who revolves her life around others. It's also important to note that the kiss in this scene signifies that Vi is ready to forgive Caitlyn for her actions in this season, and that both are willing to have the other as a part of their lives going forward. But in the Chinese version, you don't ever get to see if Vi forgives Caitlyn, or if either are fully ready to mend their platonic friendship. Lastly, let's look at Vi and Caitlyn's final scene in episode 9. The content of the dialogue in this scene is kept the same in the Chinese translation, but the scene is heavily edited to remove Vi and Caitlyn's physical contact. This could be seen as an especially extreme censorship choice. Even platonic besties lean on each other. Anyway, the last scene in the show where Vi and Caitlyn really talk is the prison scene, and again, without the kiss, you don't really know if Vi is ready to forgive Caitlyn. Going into this scene, someone who had only seen the censored version might read this scene completely differently. Vi and Caitlyn's somber expressions due to the trauma of the episode might be interpreted as coldness towards each other, or a source of lingering tension. Although Vi says she's still in the fight and calls Caitlyn by her nickname, her expression could be read as distant or sad. The ending shot of Caitlyn, where in the original she leans on Vi for comfort, could be read as her feeling discomfort or distress in the interaction. Vi and Caitlyn's relationship might be seen as rocky, awkward, and still distressful like it had been before they reconciled in the prison scene. Removing Vi and Caitlyn's romantic relationship and changing or cutting away any scenes with intimacy not only strips both characters of vital stages in their character arcs, but removes a fundamental piece of the core themes of the show. One of the major themes of Arcane is,
why does anyone commit acts others deem unspeakable? For love.
For Overton, the episode 8 prison scene is the culmination of love in our show, and it needs to be shown. Vi and Caitlyn both commit morally questionable acts for the sake of their love for each other. For example, Vi becomes an enforcer for Caitlyn, and Caitlyn lets Vi's sister, who not only killed Caitlyn's mother but is basically a terrorist, out of prison for Vi. Losing their love story robs both characters of their motivations for these actions, and weakens the show's message around love. Due to the censorship required for Arcane to be legally distributed in China, the Chinese version had to have significant changes in its scenes and characters that were so fundamental that the final version is a completely new, genetically altered version of the story. As June Fong would put it, the reconfiguration process of making China's Arcane resulted in generative censorship that created an entirely new story. For the Chinese audience that has only seen the censored version, they would come away from the show with a completely different understanding of its characters and its themes. Chinese audiences that have only seen the censored version would come away from the show with a completely different understanding of its characters and its themes. But this is all assuming that Chinese Arcane fans have only seen the censored version and can't infer at all what the original was like, which is not really the reality of the situation. Chinese audiences are not stupid. They can spot clunky editing and implied subtext just the same as us, and can pick up on it all the same. They know that in the process of adapting a Western show for Chinese distribution, censorship concerns will lead to changes. So let's look at the censored version of Vi and Caitlin's final season again. See how in the shots with Caitlin and Vi alone, the background is the same? If they were in a different part of the room, the background would change when the shots cut from one character to another. Since the background doesn't move, it's clear that they are meant to be in the same spot. In this shot, see how Caitlin's face still squishes when it meets Vi's shoulder, even in the censored version? Chinese audiences can notice that too. Knowing what kind of things get censored, any audience member really paying attention can conclude that these two are meant to be sitting next to each other. In the scene with Maddie and Caitlin, we can again see the background staying stationary, implying that they are meant to be next to each other. Additionally, both characters are in sleepwear, implying that they are sleeping in the same bed, in the same room. Side note, it's interesting that the censors allowed a scene where two female characters with a sexual relationship in the original material are wearing sleepwear and having an intimate conversation at all. Can't the audience infer that their outfits and the setting are implying a relationship, even if the censored version doesn't have them touching each other? Maybe a well-connected producer was able to convince the censors of the importance of this scene, despite what it may imply, and were able to use their Guanxi connections to get it approved. Anyways, the point is, the media literacy of modern audiences allows them to critically engage with censored media in their viewing experience and in their fandom activities online. Chinese audiences are just as eagle-eyed as anyone else, and even just watching the censored version, they likely can pick up on the subtext of the same-sex relationships even if they are heavily censored. But again, that's assuming Chinese Arcane fans haven't seen anything regarding the original version. The internet is a vast and powerful place, and as much as the CCP can try, they cannot completely control everything Chinese netizens do on the net. When the new season of Arcane came out, clips and stills from the original version of Vi and Caitlin kissing appeared on Chinese social media, where netizens could be seen cheering on the lesbian relationship. The Great Firewall is not infallible, and in fandoms where the official distributions of shows can be heavily censored, there are dedicated fan communities for legally uploading the original versions and providing fan-made subtitles. One such site full of fan subs and illegal uploads is Baidu Wangpan, a cloud-based web drive that gives many users access to the original versions of imported shows and films. In posts about the new season of Arcane on sites like Xiaohongshu, Chinese netizens can be seen asking where to see the uncensored fan sub versions, and other netizens comment suggestions and sites where they can be found. Chinese fans might also use VPNs to access Netflix or illegal streaming sites outside of China. Chinese Arcane fans know that the officially distributed version can have significant changes from the original due to censorship to the point where the story can be viewed as fundamentally different. But many have actively found ways to engage with the series the way it was meant to be viewed. After the official Chinese version of Arcane began to gain traction on Western social media and news outlets, many were quick to call China out on changing the story so significantly. But when talking about censorship in China, it's important to note that what the government wants and what the reality is for the people might be two different things. Even though the government prohibits depictions of homosexuality in film, Chinese audiences still engage with same-sex stories and themes and many of their popular cultural items. Boys' love and girls' love themes can be found in popular television shows, and there are many fandom communities around same-sex stories, such as Thai boys' love shows, dedicated to the circulation of faithful and uncensored translations of these stories. So, is the official Chinese version of Arcane, which censors the main same-sex couple of the show, an example of generative censorship, whose changes are significant enough to be considered genetic alterations? Yes, but Chinese Arcane fans know that, and assuming that they know nothing of the original underestimates them. You can't reduce censorship in China to an oppressive regime with no room for flexibility, negotiation, or resistance, because that simply is not the reality. Arcane is just one example of a long history of censorship in Chinese adaptations of imported Western media. For Western audiences who may see these clips and clutch their pearls, remember, Chinese audiences engage with their media just the same as us. And when there's a will to see a show how it was intended, Chinese netizens will make a way. Well, thank you so much all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.